In Shadow of a Doubt, of course, as in all Hitchcock films, your use of the camera has always been unique. The whole technical side of filmmaking, especially editing, has been a principal concern of yours. Would you be good enough to explain some of the basic methods in the cinematic approach to storytelling?
Well, you have two kinds of what we might call montage. I think we call it cutting. It isn't exactly that. Cutting implies severing something. It really should be called assembly. Mosaic is assembling something to create a whole. Montage means the assembly of pieces of film which, moved in rapid succession before the eye, create an idea. Of course, the most elementary form is the juxtaposition of imagery in various sizes. You know, a lot of people think that cutting is, or we'll say montage or assembly, is taking a man from one place to another and jumping into a close-up of him, which Griffith invented, it's true. But to me it goes much deeper. And as I say, the picture Psycho contained quite an amount of cinematic approach to this, to its basic content. In the first place, we had in it the murder of a woman in a shower, of a nude woman. Now, as you know, you could not take the camera and just show a nude woman being stabbed to death. It had to be done impressionistically. So it was done with little pieces of film. The head, the feet, the hand, the parts of the torso.
Shadow on the curtain.
Everything, you see, was used. The shower itself. I think in that scene there were 78 pieces of film in about 45 seconds. Now, that's one kind. Now we'll take another kind, which I would prefer to call, say, the orchestration. Loud notes, soft notes, and so forth. The second murder in Psycho was treated quite differently. It showed a detective coming up the stairs, the audience already aware that a monster was around. So they were apprehensive for him, but they didn't know when it was going to happen. So I have this man mounting the stairs in what we would call a medium shot, a waist shot. And he gets to the top of the stairs. Then I take the camera and put it very, very high, way, way high, above the ceiling almost, as though we're looking down on the whole thing. And a little figure runs out with a raised knife. And the hand goes up with the knife into the air and starts to bring it down. Now remember, these are two tiny figures. Then the next cut is a big head of the man as the knife goes across his face. Now, this is size of image put together to create shock. In other words, if it were music, it would be tremolos on the violin and suddenly a brass instrument, which is the big close-up. And from that he fell and went back. So there's an illustration of using the size of the image to create shock, or whatever you will. Now the third way is what one might call pure cinematics, the assembly of film, and how it can be changed to create a different idea. Now we have a close-up. Let me show you what he sees. Let's assume he saw a woman holding a baby in her arms. Now we cut back to his reaction to what he sees, and he smiles. Now what is he as a character? He's a kindly man. He's sympathetic. Now, let's take the middle piece of film away, the woman with the child, but leave his two pieces of film as they were. Now we'll put in a piece of film of a girl in a bikini. He looks, girl in a bikini, he smiles. What is he now? The dirty old man. He's no longer the benign gentleman who loves babies. That's the difference. That's what film can do for you.
How do you and Mr. Herman go about examining the contribution of music to a film?
Well, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, he does as he likes.
I'm brought in at the very beginning of the idea of the film. And by the time it has gone through all its stages of being written and rewritten and the final process of photographing it, I'm so much part of the whole thing that we've all begun to think one way.
But I've always found with musicians that you're in their hands anyway. What can you do? So very often I've been asked, not necessarily by Mr. Herman, but other musicians, they say, come down, I want you to know what you think of this. And you go down and you say, well, I don't care. If I say, well, we can't change it, it's all scored. So the next time you take good care to say, well, can you play me some and let me hear some of it before you go to the expense of an orchestra? Oh, no, you can't. You can't play it on a piano. It's not possible. So that there is no way to find out. So you are in the hands of a musician.
Well, Psycho is a very good example of the, if I might put it, the freedom with which Hitch thinks about music. Originally, the plan was, in our discussions, not to have any music over any of the murder scenes. However, I differed with Hitch about this and felt that music was needed. And when the music was recorded and we were dubbing the film, and we got to the murder scenes, we ran the scenes without music. And then I suggested to Hitch that I would like to show him the same scenes with music. Hitch has his own world of film, and he's created characters and places and stories for it, very much in the way Dickens did. It's not a question of whether it is a real world or an actual world, but it's a world that has been imagined and realized. Dickens was able to do it through the page, and Hitch does it through this film. And although many of the stories that he has told are stories of our time, I believe the way of presentation and the motivating psychology is essentially of the period of Dickens and the great Victorian writers. Psycho is very much, for example, like a Wilkie Collins story. I think this is part of Hitch's great heritage as an Englishman, and one that he's been able to transmute and to carry forward in the world of the cinema.
You must have a basic sense of humor about it, because that's what you're doing. You're doing it deliberately to scare people. And after all, there's no difference between my making Psycho to scare people, with tongue-in-cheek, shall we say, than a mother who says boo to scare her 3-month-old baby. What's the difference?
So you don't really feel that sociologists have much of a foundation for saying that films that record the criminal impulse or television shows that concentrate on crime have a lasting influence on the viewer?
I would say it had an influence on sick minds, but not on healthy minds. It reminds me of when I made Psycho. A man was arrested in Los Angeles for murdering 3 women. And he is alleged to have said that he murdered the 3rd woman after seeing Psycho. So I was called by the newspapers for a comment. And my only question was, what film did he see before he murdered the 2nd woman? And perhaps before he murdered the first woman, maybe he'd just drunk a glass of milk.
Fair enough.
And the little boy came up to me once in the street, about a 7-year-old boy, and said, Mr. Hitchcock, in that murder scene in Psycho, what did you use for blood? Chicken blood? I said, no, chocolate sauce. Okay, and he went on his way.
Well,
see, the operative phrase was, what did you use for blood? He didn't believe it.